This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Thanks for checking in. We're learning more today about that crash of a U.S. Army helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. 2 pilots on board were rescued. NBC's Richard Engel has the latest.
The U.S. Central Command says that this Apache attack helicopter went down, was lost at sea while patrolling off the coast of Oman, that immediately a search and rescue operation was launched, and that the crew members were ultimately located and recovered by a sea drone, the first of its kind operation by the U.S. military. The cause of the crash is still under investigation.
Meantime, Iran and Israel have agreed to stop shooting at each other. President Trump spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu after an exchange of rocket fire over the weekend.
We had a very good conversation, and he was hit, and he hit back, and I can't blame him for that. And now they've called it quits, so they're going to leave each other alone for another week or so.
Vice President J.D. Vance.
Everybody's always trying to play everybody. The Iranians don't want this war to continue. The president's attitude on this is, if we get to this deal, it's going to be a home run win for the American people.
Israel today urged the immediate evacuation of the ancient Christian city of Tyre, Lebanon, as tensions remain high throughout the Middle East. It's primary day in the state of Maine, and Democrats remain divided over a controversial Senate candidate. He's 41-year-old Marine Corps veteran and oyster farmer Graham Plattner, and he is favored to win despite a Nazi tattoo, a sexting scandal, and allegations of domestic abuse. Plattner ally Bernie Sanders.
There are people in the United States Senate right now who are not saints.
New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
We are all very committed in making sure that there's a Democratic majority in the Senate. It's not to say that what has transpired is okay.
Polls show Plattner with a slight lead over 5-term incumbent Republican Susan Collins. Democrats desperately want to pick up that Maine seat to help them take back control of the U.S. Senate next year. The runoff is set for mayor of L.A., and political newcomer Spencer Pratt is out. He's been eliminated. He was ousted by a left-wing socialist last night. NBC's Liz Kreutz.
Spencer Pratt gained a lot of momentum, especially online, through his viral campaign ads railing against the city's leadership, as well as his personal story of losing his home in the Palisades fire. But in this very blue city where Democrats overwhelmingly outnumber Republicans, it wasn't enough to clinch that critical second spot to run off against the incumbent mayor, Karen Bass.
Critics say it took too long to count the vote in California. Bill Essayli is the U.S. attorney for the Central District of California. He weighed in on ballot harvesting in the Golden State.
We have no chain of custody. They're not required to tell us who they are or how many ballots they collected. And so you have no idea who's receiving the ballot, completing the ballot, returning the ballot. And so all we have is the post office delivering millions of ballots to the registrar of voters.
First-time voters in California are able to register with any form of ID, including gym membership cards, insurance cards, and credit cards. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison accused of ignoring fraud in their state. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer.
Apparently, you can only commit welfare fraud if you're white.
Comer claims the political Minnesota twins conveniently look the other way.
Tim Walz and Keith Ellison knew that the beneficiaries of this particular fraud were the Somalis in Minnesota. That's a massive voting bloc for the Democrat Party to keep Minnesota blue, and they didn't want to do anything to rock the boat.
He adds state employees who flagged the fraud faced retaliation and even intimidation. Minnesota swindlers accused of bilking the federal government out of a staggering $9 billion in Medicaid payments and $300 million in food dollars for the poor. A new poll shows high prices are irritating many Americans. Americans.
44% of Americans now say their financial situation is worse than a year ago, and 13% say their situation is much worse, the highest percentage in 4 years.
ABC's Karen Waugh says that poll was conducted by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. NASA today named the crew of the next Artemis moon mission. 4 astronauts will take part in that mission late next year. The Artemis 3 mission is the only one that will happen entirely in low Earth orbit. That mission will require astronauts dock the Orion spacecraft with commercial lunar landers. More cases of the New World screwworm in cows in South Texas. That flesh-eating fly has also been diagnosed in a dog in New Mexico. Still, Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins says there's nothing to worry about here.
The food supply system remains intact and couldn't be safer or better than any other food supply system in the world.
These screwworm cases are the first in the U.S. since the 1960s. Victor Wembanyama led the San Antonio Spurs over the New York Knicks in Game 3 of the NBA Finals last night. The Spurs' victory stopping a 13-game postseason win streak for the Knicks, who are trying to capture their first NBA title since 1973. President Trump was in attendance at the game last night at Madison Square Garden. He is the first sitting president to ever attend an NBA Finals game. Still to come on the Noon Report for Tuesday, state-sanctioned suicide, portrait of a graduate, and the fight over fracking heats up again.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. A warm, summery day underway where we'll be tracking some showers and thunderstorms, though, this week. I'll have the latest forecast coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Let's check the stories making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania. New York's doctor-assisted suicide law takes effect this summer, and tonight, a prominent bioethicist from Canada will be talking about it in Corning, New York. Dr. Maura McQueen will be speaking at the American Legion in South Corning. She says there are lots of unknowns when it comes to New York's Medical Aid in Dying Act. I spoke with the doctor earlier today, and here's more of that conversation. This will become law August 5th in New York. It's been the law of the land in Canada for a decade now. Explain the effect of assisted suicide north of the border and the impact it's had on the culture there.
Yes, the Medical Assistance in Dying Act passed in Canada in 2016, so we've had a decade's worth of finding out what the law entails. And apart from just my own stance of being against the law, it's been very enlightening to discover what has happened since, especially in the area of safeguards. Every single one of them has disappeared.
I read a statistic just yesterday. More than 5% of every death now in Canada is the result of assisted suicide. Do those numbers seem correct to you?
Oh, they are correct. And it's very concerning because I think nearly everybody who deals with this sort of legislation imagines at the beginning that the procedures will only happen in a very tiny number of cases, but that has not been the fact at all. It has really broadened. One of the interesting side effects, too, is that all the people who work for suicide prevention are really up in arms against all of these measures. In 2021, Canada actually changed its law to allow euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide for people suffering only from mental illness.
Yeah, they call it a lot of things. Death with dignity. In New York, they're calling it medical aid in dying. I had a friend who's on the front lines of this say, assisted suicide is suicide. Let's not try to confuse people with what it is, and words matter here. So why do you think it's becoming more acceptable, it seems, than it may have a generation ago?
Well, it's certainly not because of the cost of health care in Canada or in other countries where health is subsidized by government. So it's not really anything to do with cost.
Yeah, it's in 13 states now. New York is the 13th, and it's spreading like wildfire. And I'm telling you, I've had so many doctors on who have said, hold on a minute here. This is a genie you cannot get back in the bottle once you start down this road, and you're you're living it in Canada, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad there are so many doctors who are concerned. That didn't seem to be the case in Canada overall, and that was a real concern for any of us who are pro-life.
Yeah.
Once something like this has started, it becomes a juggernaut. It's very difficult to stop, and yet most of us feel we have to try.
Yeah. You mentioned you're pro-life. I am saddened by so many pro-life New Yorkers who have no problem with assisted suicide. To me, that smacks of a contradiction of sorts. Doesn't it to you as well?
Oh, absolutely. When we're starting on the premise that life is a gift and life is sacred and every life should be protected, and that we do not have the right to take somebody else's life in these sorts of situations, it's morally wrong as far as I'm concerned. It also defies logic to me that I can protect life at one end and not protect it at the other.
That is Canadian bioethicist Dr. Maura McQueen. She'll be speaking tonight at the American Legion in South Corning on the dangers of doctor-assisted suicide. The first state-sanctioned suicides in New York will happen in early August. Pennsylvania Republican gubernatorial candidate Stacey Garrity is calling for an indefinite pause on AI data center development all across the Keystone State.
What I hear is not in my backyard.
Garrity hosted a listening session yesterday with local officials who are grappling with these facilities.
Data center development should be restricted to industrial and brownfield sites.
Garrity blames her opponent in the fall election, Governor Shapiro, for cheerleading fast approval of these projects.
And there's been a lot of ambiguity coming out of the governor's office.
There are currently nearly 80 proposals for data centers across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin was in Binghamton Monday, touting construction of the so-called Constitution Pipeline. The former New York gubernatorial candidate is also trying to reverse the state's ban on hydrofracking. That ban has been in place for over a decade now, and for good reason, says environmentalist Sandra Steingraber.
We now have 5 times as much evidence as we did 12 years ago, and those data all say the same thing, which is fracking imperils water, air, and health.
But Zeldin says fracking can and should be done safely without harming the environment or people's health.
We tap into our energy supplies so much safer than so many other countries do elsewhere around the world. Here in the United States, especially in a place like New York and in New England, we are relying in out-of-country sources for energy, and it doesn't have to be that way.
The proposed 125-mile Constitution Pipeline would transport energy from Pennsylvania to the eastern Twin Tiers and New England. The Pennsylvania House has approved a bill requiring schools train staff on how to spot and treat an epileptic seizure. The legislation requires epileptic training for school nurses and employees who have direct contact with students. Nearly 130,000 children in the Commonwealth today have epilepsy. New York education officials continue to phase out the decades-old Regents exams. They're being replaced soon by the so-called Portrait of a Graduate program, which will focus on a real-world framework for measuring academic prowess.
This move away from Regents is done thoughtfully and carefully. I think it will actually benefit the students of New York State.
That's Dr. Ryan Kimmett. He heads up a college prep school near Rochester and tells Spectrum News.
We have 3 students next year that are going to musical conservatory programs. I don't think the Regents is something that really prepares students for that.
We really want students to have the foundational strengths to become creative innovators.
Diane Nickerson sits on the New York Education Department Advisory Council. The Portrait of a Graduate program requires students demonstrate proficiency in 6 areas of academics in order to graduate. The new statewide standards start with students who are entering the 9th grade during the 2029-2030 academic year. The world's largest steam locomotive is making a pit stop today in Buffalo, appropriately named Big Boy. This massive piece of machinery is on a coast-to-coast trip marking America's 250th birthday. Steve Kosas is an expert on train history. He tells News Talk 930.
Big Boy is an immense engine in Buffalo, this will probably be the only chance you get to see it in years.
As part of the tour, the Union Pacific Museum sold tickets recently for rides in vintage passenger cars that will be pulled by Big Boy through Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains. That happens later this month. Sorry to say, folks, those tickets have sold out. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the 13-game postseason win streak is over for the New York Knicks. San Antonio beat them last night at Madison Square Garden 115-111. The Spurs' Stephon Castle and Victor Wembanyama became the first pair of teammates aged 22 or younger to both score at least 20 points in a finals game. Wembanyama poured in a game-tying high 32 points, while Castle finished with 23. With San Antonio's victory, it marks only the second time ever in the NBA Finals that the road team has won the first 3 games. Now the Knicks still lead the series 2-1 with Game 4 set tomorrow night back at the Garden. For the Knicks, Jalen Brunson tied Wembanyama with 32 points. OG Anunoby scored 28. To baseball, the Yankees' Cody Bellinger came through again with a bases-loaded single in the 10th inning. New York beat Cleveland 7-5. Paul Goldschmidt, Ryan McMahon both went yard in the victory. Christopher Sanchez struck out 10 Blue Jays, and the Phillies got a 2-run shot from Adolis Garcia as they knocked off Toronto 5-2. It was a slugfest in Las Vegas. 29 runs were scored between the Brewers and the Athletics. Andrew Vaughn had 4 hits and 4 ribbies, including a 2-run double that tied the game in the 9th inning. Both teams scored 4 runs in the 10th. There were a total of 34 hits. 14 pitchers combined to throw 444 pitches, and also 11 home runs were hit in the contest. Oh yeah, Milwaukee outlasted the Athletics 15-14 in 12. Also picking up wins, the Mariners, Rays, Astros, Padres, and Nationals. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you kindly. Still to come on the Noon Report. High hard heat on the way. Pennsylvania tackles human trafficking and dramatic rescue near the Strait of Hormuz.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. A growing number of young Christian men seem to be rediscovering words largely absent from modern evangelical vocabulary, like kingdom, authority, discipline, order, responsibility, courage, civilization. Well, frankly, this is understandable. Many young people, especially young men, have grown weary of shallow Christianity shaped more, it seems, by therapy than theology, more by self-expression than self-denial. They're looking for something weightier, something deeper. They want roots, depth, conviction, purpose. In other words, they are looking for formation. This is a good hunger. Across denominations, in fact, pastors have been observing to us that there's a renewed interest, especially among younger Christians, in things like church history, spiritual disciplines, Bible study, liturgy. But like every renewal movement in church history, sincere instincts can become distorted if they are detached from the character of Christ. Recently, a loose constellation of online voices that are sometimes referred to as kingdom bros has emerged around these themes. They're not really a formal movement. It tends to emphasize masculine strength, cultural engagement, civilizational renewal. And many of the concerns they raise are legitimate. Christians should reject passivity. The gospel does have public implications. The kingdom of God does concern every sphere of life. But confusion arises when the kingdom of God is subtly redefined according to the logic of the world. In every age, Christians are tempted to exchange holiness for influence, to exchange Christ-likeness for simply winning. Jesus confronted this temptation in Matthew when his disciples were arguing about the kingdom in terms of power and status. He told them, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, but it shall not be so among you." That single sentence might be one of the most neglected teachings in modern cultural Christianity. The kingdom of God is not a baptized version of worldly power. It's not advanced through coercion, outrage, tribalism, or the will to dominate. Chuck Colson certainly understood this. Though deeply engaged in public life, he often reminded Christians, we propose, we don't impose. That's because he was wary of power, especially unchecked power, especially unchecked political power. The Christian vision for society is not imposed through force or manipulation or cultural intimidation. Christians bear witness to the truth. We persuade, we serve, we sacrifice. We talk of another kingdom, one not of this world, yet profoundly for this world. The church does not grow through conquest. It grows through faithfulness. And that's where many of the modern conversations about winning the culture become so spiritually dangerous, because success is not the same thing as faithfulness. This matters especially for young men who are seeking purpose today. They are absolutely right to reject passivity, pornography, consumerism, perpetual adolescence. They are absolutely right to desire brotherhood and to be put on a mission. The church should celebrate that hunger and then direct it. The Colson Fellows program is designed around this particular vision of formation, to go deeper, not to become angry, not just to be able to argue, but to be able to love God with heart, mind, soul, and strength. To learn more about the Colson Fellows program and to be the kind of formed Christian that can engage this cultural moment with truth and love, check out the Colson Fellows program at colsonfellows.org. That's colsonfellows.org. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Let's head outside next. It's Weather Where You Live with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Our call for this afternoon, some sunshine, quite warm and more humid than of late. There will be a couple of thunderstorms in the area, mainly parts of western New York and northwest Pennsylvania. High temps, 80s to near 90s. Tonight, some clouds and muggy, chance for shower thunderstorm, low temps, 60s. Tomorrow, be a muggy day, variable cloudiness, couple of showers and thunderstorms, high temps, 80s. And warm and humid Thursday, sun, clouds, and a thunderstorm or two in the area with high temps, mid-80s to the middle 90s.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price. A lot to get to. Tuesday, the 9th of June. An American Apache helicopter crashed today near the Strait of Hormuz. 2 Army pilots aboard were rescued. ABC's Martha Raddatz.
The rescue was carried out by Navy and Air Force assets from what is called Task Force 59, the Navy's first ever drone task force. An unmanned Navy surface vessel, a drone boat, was sent to pick up the downed crew. The crew was able to climb aboard the boat, which then delivered them to shore. All of this happened within 2 hours of the helicopter going down.
As the war with Iran rages on, national security expert Alex Gray says war-weary Americans need to keep in mind
no one has been clearer in their opposition to these forever wars than Donald J. Trump. I think it's why Americans should trust him uniquely to come up with a deal that is a lasting, transformational deal in terms of our ability to never have to do something like this again.
Iran and Israel have agreed to resume their ceasefire after trading rocket fire over the weekend. Millions of Americans casting ballots in primary elections today, none bigger than in Maine, where a controversial Senate candidate is expected to coast to victory. He's 41-year-old Marine Corps vet and oyster farmer Graham Plattner, hoping to unseat incumbent Republican Susan Collins this fall. Plattner's a liberal Democrat who's come under fire for his treatment of women and for once sporting a Nazi tattoo. Political analyst Stephanie Hamill.
So far, we've seen him dominating in all of the polling when it comes to the Democratic primary, like overwhelming numbers, like 60, 70%. So if those numbers actually come true, that'll leave us asking, where is the Democratic Party today? Where are these Democratic voters in Maine? How are they supporting a candidate that has this much baggage?
Elsewhere at the ballot box, the results are in for the contested L.A. mayoral race. A far-left socialist has knocked out political newcomer Spencer Pratt for the right to take on incumbent Democrat Karen Bass in the fall. Many conservatives are critical of the amount of time it has taken California to count the ballots. Mayor Bass says that's just sour grapes. She spoke to NBC.
What do you make of the president's claims and some of the claims by Spencer Pratt's supporters that the Democrats have cheated in this election?
Well, I mean, I think that that's a familiar
accusation that is made when one is losing.
Statewide, more than 1 million mail-in ballots still need to be counted over a week after the California election. Weather watchers confirm a half dozen twisters touched down over the weekend in southwestern Pennsylvania.
National Weather Service survey teams have confirmed that 6 tornadoes touched down in Washington, Fayette, and Westmoreland counties on Saturday, with wind speeds reaching 100 miles per hour. 2 of the twisters were rated EF1, and additional straight-line winds of 90 to 100 miles per hour caused widespread damage in the town of Scottdale. The storms toppled trees, damaged homes and utility lines, and left thousands without power. Most service has been restored as cleanup efforts continue across the region. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Higher academia is growing increasingly alarmed over the growing percentage of Gen Zers who are arriving at college unable to read. Critics fear the problem's so bad that colleges are actually watering down standards for reading comprehension. A report in the New York Times shows nearly half of all Americans did not read a single book last year. The Pentagon is reversing a short-lived policy on the Mormon faith. It was recently listed as a non-Christian denomination by War Secretary Pete Hegseth. The Pentagon chief backtracked after getting significant backlash from politicians in Utah. And a new CDC report suggests a correlation between the invention of the iPhone and declining birth rates in these United States. Researchers say there's been a 23% drop in fertility rates since the year that the iPhone was born in 2007. You're listening to the Noon Report, a Tuesday edition on Family Life.
This is Mission Pulse. We spotlight those making a difference where you live, across the country, and around the world. With me today, Corinne Moon, president and co-founder of Lantern Rescue. We're going to start right at the beginning today, which is, what is Lantern Rescue?
So Lantern Rescue is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is focused on rescuing victims of human trafficking around the world.
You work actively against human trafficking in Pennsylvania and overseas in 18 different countries. Many people think that human trafficking isn't happening in their town. Can you paint a picture of what human trafficking looks like and speak to rural Pennsylvania?
Yeah, absolutely. So human trafficking is happening in every country in the world, probably every town in the world. What that looks like is a lot different than what people generally think, and that's kind of where we get this misconception that it's not happening where people live. But to speak specifically to rural Pennsylvania and what you're most commonly going to see in areas like that, we're going to see a lot of stuff online with rural Pennsylvania when it comes to kids. So something that also should be mentioned is that victims of human trafficking can be any age, race, or gender. This is not just children. This is not just girls. This really can be anyone. But what we do see when it comes to children, specifically in rural Pennsylvania, and the type of trafficking that they might encounter is a lot of online stuff. So sextortion, CSAM, which is the new word for child pornography, and grooming that's happening online that is causing children to develop relationships, to be groomed by traffickers, and then to enter into some situations where they're sending nude images online and traffickers are selling those, and they're actually meeting up with people and being sex trafficked in person.
How big is human trafficking? I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, probably every town in the United States is impacted. You said it's not just teenage girls, but give me some numbers and statistics. How often are people getting pulled into the human trafficking system?
There's somewhere between 28 and 50 million victims of human trafficking, like globally. That number is probably not entirely accurate, but it's the best estimate we have because no one's taking a survey about human trafficking. Victims are not answering a survey about whether they're a victim or not. Most victims of human trafficking don't realize they're victims. It is a massive thing, and it's hard to really quantify because there's a lot of misconceptions as well as people aren't aware what it is, so they're not identifying as that. But it is something that anyone, truly anyone from any, like I said earlier, age, race, gender, any social class can be exposed to, whether that's online or in person.
What are some things that we can be doing to protect our kids?
The biggest thing I would say when it comes to children is really knowing who they're communicating with online online, and not necessarily putting really harsh restrictions, but having an open conversation about their online presence and what is and what is not appropriate and what is and what isn't allowed. For example, don't add people that you have not met in person, period. So when it's my friend's cousin that we played soccer against 4 years ago, no, that is not someone you actually know. This whole culture of kids putting their value into how many friends and how many likes they have online is very toxic, and we have to start to make it cool to have a small group of friends that you trust online, because what kids are sharing online is their grades, their fight with their parents, their friends, where they play soccer at, what pool they go to in the summer, all these things that can make them a target for individuals that mean them harm.
Tell me one story out of Lantern Rescue that will always stay with you, something that makes you get up every day and do what you do.
A couple of years ago, we had a very large rescue in another country. There was 83 victims that were rescued as part of this operation. A couple of them I stayed in contact with, but one in particular that I stayed in contact with for years, who was in her later 20s when she was trafficked. She had a young son at home, and she was trafficked from her home country into another country under the false promises of a job, and when she got there, she ended up being sex trafficked. We do see that pretty frequently overseas. Even after they were rescued and the traffickers were arrested and put away, she still thought she owed her trafficker a debt for paying for her passport to get her over to the other country. The level of grooming and indoctrination that these traffickers have on these people, that even after they're in prison and the victim is freed and back in their home country, the victim still thinks that they owe a debt. They still think that they need to be taking care of this. And even months later, when I visited her in her home country, she still was coming to terms with the fact that she had been a victim of human trafficking, because even on the day of her rescue, she still didn't think that's what was happening to her. She thought that she had a debt that needed paid, and this is how she was paying it. So stuff like that always sticks with me, because it shows that level of control that traffickers have and how well they're able to isolate and manipulate them.
How can we stay in touch with your work?
We are on social media, just Lantern Rescue on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then our website is lanternrescue.org. Pretty simple. And if anyone has questions, you can email us at lighttheway@lanternrescue.org.
Corinne Moon, president and co-founder of Lantern Rescue. It's a job that probably none of us want, but we're really, really grateful for the work that you're doing every day.
Thank you.
All right, great discussion. Thank you, Sarah. The name of the program, Mission Pulse. Tuesdays during the Noon Report, we spotlight ministries making a difference where you live, across the country, and around the world. And finally at noon, got a broken lamp or a finicky zipper? Don't fret it, just fix it. ABC's Chuck Severson says repair cafes are popping up all over the place.
It's part of a new brand of what's called anti-consumerism, efforts to offer an alternative to mass-produced, disposable goods that have dominated the economy for the last half-century. Repair cafes are free events where volunteers with technical know-how help neighbors fix household items. They started in the Netherlands with a single cafe in 2009 and grew to a global nonprofit. At a recent event in New Paltz, New York, volunteers helped attendees fix items from lamps and knives to sound mixers and bulky zippers.
Yeah, don't fret it, just fix it. Repair cafes are all the rage these days. And that's our world, the world we live in. Tuesday, the 9th day of June. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.